That basically faith, Islam does teach intelligence, and Islam does make or transform Muslims to a new level of intelligence, of well-being, of performance, and it transforms every aspect of the life of a Muslim if it's understood well and implemented well. The problem is with deficient understanding and deficient implementation. Many times we bring a lot of stuff from our cultures, and when it's questioned, we are asked about it. Okay, we tend to search through the Quran and the Sunnah to find anything to substantiate what we are practicing. Why? Because of our self-pride. So we sacrifice Islam, and we sacrifice the opportunity of being able to investigate and understand Islam at the altar of our false self-pride. This is something that has to be handled and has to be dealt with. I said the Prophet ﷺ, and this is the point I'm dealing with, is that if you are intelligent, if you are physically fit, if your intention is good, if you are generally smart, and if you have the material and financial resources, this is no guarantee that you will be successful. Actually, you might achieve what is known today as success, but in reality, you could be a failure. And I gave the famous examples that are available in the literature today, Western literature. They say, even if you are efficient at cutting trees and sowing trees, you will be a failure unless you make sure you are cutting trees in the right forest. Because it doesn't make any difference how efficient you are if you are in the wrong forest. Another analogy is, before you climb the ladder, make sure it's leaning against the right wall. Now, many people who achieve material success, professional success, intellectual success in this world, now what's the point if all of this success is ultimately going to lead you to the hellfire? Islam doesn't teach people what they think to be prejudice. Because they come to criticize Islam, they say, Muslims say only, or these Muslims go around saying only Muslims go make it to paradise. Why not others? That's their terminology, that's wrong. Islam is not telling you that. Islam is teaching us to be smart, taking all realms, all aspects of our life, of our existence into consideration, that when you are cutting trees, you make sure that you are in the right forest. That when you climb the ladder, you know that it's leaning against the right wall. That's exactly what Islam teaches. Islam tells you to take into consideration all these aspects of your life. On another level, a person could be very intelligent, and this is something we know from school. Something that is very common in my own country, at least, when I was young in school, it was a shame if you do your homework. If you study at home, that's an indication that you are not intelligent enough. Intelligent people don't need to study. If you study at home, you're dumb. So most people hide themselves at home. They go under the bed and do some homework, or they study. Why? Because they don't want others to think or to see them dumb. I'm intelligent. How much did you study for the exam? I didn't. I was watching TV yesterday. That's an intelligent guy. And unfortunately, all of them, they lie, they cheat. They hide themselves and they study. And they say, I didn't study yesterday, but I got 19 out of 20. See? That's very common. That's serious. That's a serious problem. Now, some naive people, let me say simple-minded, well-intentioned people, they are intelligent. They see this is the case. And because they are very sincere with themselves, they don't cheat. So they say, no, we are intelligent, I'll make it without studying. And they get the lowest grades. Now they are intelligent. That you are intelligent is not a guarantee that you will get good grades. You have to have practical intelligence. What is practical intelligence? You have to understand the whole situation and give everything its right. In order to pass the exam and get good grades, you have to study, even if you are intelligent. Now that becomes a more complete type of intelligence. People who have the talent and they don't develop this talent or take care of it, they have the talent, but they will not be successful unless you go through the process of training until you transform your performance. This is how life works. The very fact or the very understanding of this principle is intelligence, is a form of intelligence. Because if you have the wrong information, the wrong impression, you lack this intelligence. And this is what we describe as faith-based intelligence. Faith-based intelligence tells people to use all the resources Allah has given them. Use them right, and you will be successful. So you will achieve success because our life does not extend only for 50, 60, 70 years. That's a fallacy. That's only a stage of our lives. We are created to live forever. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. We will live forever. Allah states that clearly in the Quran. So imagine, in the humans generally, when we think, and let me give this analogy as well. Any computer program, what does it end with? What does it end with? What is it called? No, a computer program. The name, what does it end with? Dot what? .com.exe, okay? Extension, Jazakallah khair. We call it the extension. What is the extension of that file? It tells you what type of file it is. So if there's no computer program that does not have an extension, it must have. It's an integral part. Okay? Our thoughts as human beings, our actions, every human activity, every aspect of our lives has an extension. But it's very subtle that we don't realize it. And we don't realize its power. Do you know what that extension is? Anyone can tell me? Anyone can tell me? Huh? No. Every thought that goes through your mind, every action you do, every word you say, anything, any human activity, okay? It has an extension. And this... No, I don't mean that extension that it complements. What I mean, it's an extension, it's an integral part. And if you change it, the whole action changes. Your whole thing, no. You'll be surprised. Time dimension. Time dimension. Time dimension. We think, when we look at our medium, and this is why I repeatedly say we are trapped in the material vision of the outlook on the world. Materialism has creeped into Muslims, and predominantly we think with a materialist kind of mentality. Materialism, the physical world, is one dimension of our existence. Another dimension is time. There is a dimension of time. And each one of us, with any action you do, any thought goes through your mind, it has an element of time in it. Change the element of time, change the time dimension of that thought, of that action, it changes totally. I'll give you an example. And I want you to do this kind of mental rehearsal, please. You don't want to, you don't have to, but you will miss the benefit. If you feel more comfortable, close your eyes. If you don't feel comfortable, keep them open. I want you to think of a time in your life, a stage in your life, when you were in real trouble, in distress. And you were wishing that this moment would be over. 1 second seemed like an hour. And you were waiting for you were in total distress, and you just couldn't wait for the time that this whole thing is over. You wish it was a dream and you would just wake up and get rid of it. Think about that. I'll give you the time, a few seconds. If you feel more comfortable, more focused, close your eyes. When you close your eyes, you will benefit more. But it's up to you. Think about it, go into deep thought, and I want you to call back again the same feelings you had. Live that moment again. Live it again, as if you were really in distress. Feel all the pain, all the contractness in your chest. You couldn't breathe, you felt it was difficult, the whole world was on your shoulders, and your patience ran out. Think about this moment, and keep yourself there. Now I want you to see, you know what happens at that moment? We tend to have a blockade that blocks our past and blocks our future. So our time horizon contracts, and it seems that our whole life disappeared and we only live in this moment. So we get trapped, the two blockades. This is why we can't breathe, we feel cornered. and we feel troubled, we can't even think. Now what you can do, as you do with Google Earth, imagine your life as a very long highway, like 500, 600 kilometers. And you're just looking at yourself in that spot, as one spot on the highway. You were in distress, and there is a blockade before you and after you, and you cannot escape from that. And this is where the stress comes from. Now I want you to zoom out, just as you do with Google Earth. Zoom out, zoom out. Try to recall the feelings, then zoom out, zoom out. Look at your life, that you have a long past before, and you have a long future, and death is not the end. There's a hereafter, and there is so many wonderful things in paradise that Allah has prepared. So your life is much vast, or much longer than what you thought about. Now the moment you manage to mentally zoom out of that spot and look at your life as a long line that extends even to the hereafter, extends forever, that moment, the stress is gone. You see it? You have already distanced yourself from that. Do you know why? Because you've changed the time extension. You've changed the time extension. Straight away your whole thought changes. What is the difference between people who are generous and people who are miserly? Mainly, a great deal is time. It is the time extension, the time component in their thoughts. Why do the believers, the Muslims, sacrifice a lot of the things that they have for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although they could get so much immediate benefit? Why? The time horizon is much wider. The wider your time horizon, the more wise you become. The more you will be able to put everything in its right place, give it its true weight. And you will be able to break from the stress. Every time you fall in hardship, try this mental exercise. Try it. Try it. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this joins what I said 2 days ago, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about as-sabirin, the ones when they are hit by fear, loss of wealth, loss of health, and loss of souls, and they're hit by tragedy. They are the ones who say, they are the sabirin, the patient ones. They say, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We still have a long journey to Allah. We shall return to Him. Our life is much longer than that. Straight away they break from that blockade. So they're no longer captive. So they can, straight away they develop the patience. Allah says about these, أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَيْهِمْ صَلَوَاتٌ مِّن رَبِّهِمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ. Upon those there will be forgiveness and mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُهْتَدُونَ. Those are the guided. Why? Because they see the bigger picture. They're guided. So they do not get consumed by any calamity when it hits them. They can break from that. So you see, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us to believe in Him, and this is something we talked about when it came to identity, we talked about one aspect of it. Now, what can we classify this? Belief in the hereafter. Belief in al-akhirah. You see how it helps you even today? It helps us today. Many people think, as atheists, they say, you believe in it because it's convenient. It's not. It's practical. And it's true. It's practical and true. So the articles of faith is not something we learn at school or in the weekend school, and we keep it somewhere closed in our minds, and it has no place in our life. For most of my life, these articles of faith were only theory. I never thought about them when I was going through trouble. I never had them when I thought about my plans for the future. I never thought about them when I thought about myself and about my life. But belief in the hereafter, that's one of the aspects of belief in the hereafter. You see how powerful it could be? It's practical. Our faith is practical. That's intelligence. That's faith-based intelligence. This is only a tiny aspect of belief in the hereafter. We have it. It helps us. But why don't we use it? That's the question. Now I said the Prophet ﷺ, at the time of Mecca, because the Muslims were weak, he did not challenge the people of Quraysh. Although he saw his companions being tortured, being killed, he did not do anything. Actually, Khabbab ibn al-Arat came to the Prophet ﷺ when he was resting in the shade of the Kaaba. He told him, "O Messenger of Allah, we can't put up any more with that torture. Why don't you just supplicate?" He didn't say, "Let's go and fight these guys, let's do this, let's do." He said, "Just supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, get us out of this calamity." He was under so much pressure, he couldn't handle that. What did the Prophet ﷺ say to him? He said, yes, I understand. We have to do something. We have to, conspire. We have to think of something. No, what did he say? The Prophet ﷺ told him that the people who came before you, one of them would be sawed into two halves, and he would not give up his deen. And they would bring combs, iron combs, and comb away his nerves and flesh from his bones when he was alive. And that would not cause him to recant his deen or give up his deen. And how did the Prophet ﷺ end his advice? He said, وَلَكِنَّكُمْ قَوْمٌ تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ. You guys are hasty. Was the Prophet ﷺ, lacking sympathy for his companions? Was he scared of the people of Mecca, like in the sense that he did not have courage? No. But he had to put everything in its right place. You have to go through a stage of test. It's not Islamic to act irrationally, based on emotion. That's what some number among the Muslim youth act today. They think, when they read the Muslim history, they think we still live in the same time. We don't live in the same time. We live at a time of weakness. We have to understand that well. Now, if we ignore this reality, we're going to make things worse. Once we don't analyze this reality and develop this kind of intelligence to put everything in its right place, give everything in its right weight, and build a powerful strategy that is based on facts, then we will always aggravate the situation, make it worse all the time. All the time. This is why the Prophet ﷺ was careful. He did not incite his companions. He said, okay, they torture you, go and kill their children and their wives, or kill them, or set them up. He didn't say that. He realized that this could be an impulse that would bring destruction to Islam. That's not the way. That's not the Islamic mannerism of doing things. So we put up with that. We read the facts about our reality, and we handle them with patience, with wisdom, with understanding, and all of this could be called faith-based intelligence. Trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another example that could be puzzling, because some people might say, okay, that's different from our reality. I tell you, the Prophet ﷺ had enough power in Medina. When they went to make Umrah, he went to make Umrah with the companions. On the way, they realized that the people of Mecca said, no way we'll let Muhammad into Mecca. He's not getting into Mecca. So the Prophet ﷺ camped at some stage. Then they sent to him some people to negotiate. Then they sent one of the notorious people of Quraysh, a very intelligent, deceptive guy. His name was Suhail ibn Amr. Suhail ibn Amr came to the Prophet ﷺ, and finally they agreed that Muhammad goes back to Medina. You don't come to Mecca this year. You come next year if you want to make Umrah. And we make a treaty, a truce with you. No battle, no war between us. Safety or peace. And any tribe that wants to ally itself with Muhammad, let them do that. Any tribe wants to ally itself with Quraysh, they can do that. Any person, any Muslim who wants to give up Islam and come to Mecca, he has the right to do that. Muhammad ﷺ cannot stop him. Anyone from Mecca embraces Islam, comes to Medina, the Prophet ﷺ himself sends him back to Mecca. If a Muslim does that today, what would you call him? I'm sure some young people would call him kafir. Because there are some Muslims who do something much less than that, and some brothers unfortunately call him your kafir. That's a serious issue. The Prophet ﷺ, imagine a Muslim comes to him from Mecca, embraced Islam. The Prophet ﷺ sends him back to Mecca. What do the Meccans do to him? Torture him. How could the Prophet ﷺ agree to something like that? See, Umar ibn Khattab could not swallow this. He said, O Messenger of Allah, aren't we not upon the truth? Aren't we not, don't we have enough power? We were weak, Allah gave us power. The Prophet ﷺ told him, don't you believe that I am the Messenger of Allah? He said, yes. He said, leave it for me. That's the gist of it. So many Muslims today, they say, okay, we are Muslims. They read the history of Islam. They see how much honor the Muslims had. Umar ibn Khattab, how he dealt with the enemies of Islam. How Muslims had this dignity and this beautiful appeal in it when it comes to personality, courage, and because they had the strength, they had the power. they had the authority to do it. Some people want to still function from that same mentality when we are weak. It doesn't function. It doesn't work like that. We have to read the realities around us. Now the core doesn't change. Our faith, our trust in Allah don't change. But actually, we are exactly following the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another beautiful example of this faith-based intelligence. Umar ibn al-Khattab, during Aam al-Ramada, it was a year of famine. A year of famine. Umar ibn al-Khattab used to give every Muslim a monthly salary, welfare, without even asking for it. That's your right. That's your absolute right. No one has the right to deny you that right. Whether you work, you don't work, that's your right. You get that salary. Once the kid is born, the salary reaches him to his home. He doesn't have to go to the community center or whatever it is and ask for that welfare and be humiliated until he's given that money. That's your right. It comes to your home, to your doorstep. So during that year of famine, Umar ibn Khattab, what did he do? He issued a ruling that any thief who is caught stealing food or any of the life necessities, if all the conditions are there, then the Islamic punishment will not be, prescribed punishment will not be applied on him. Did Umar ibn Khattab contradict Islam? Did he change the deen of the Prophet ﷺ? No, I tell you, Umar at that very instance, he implemented real Islam. How was that? That's faith-based intelligence. Because this kind of punishment was prescribed when people are given no excuse to steal. How could you take other people's property if you have all your basics answered, your dignity being preserved, all your rights are given to you, and you steal at least 3 times before you are caught, the 3rd time, and it has to reach a certain amount of money, okay, that is beyond your basic needs. That's just much more than your basic needs. Only with these conditions there, the punishment is applied on you. If you do that, and you get that kind of welfare or that kind of monthly salary, then you have a mental illness. You are a serious threat to the community, to the society, and you need to be treated. So Umar ibn Khattab realized, under the conditions, under the circumstances of this famine, this wisdom will not be achieved by applying the Islamic punishment. So he applied the spirit of the Islamic law. Obviously, don't think that you can do that. No one can do it, except for the well-versed scholars after they consult with each other. And they realize for fact that this actually brings about the objectives of Sharia, which are the goals for which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent His Sharia for us to achieve, which are known as maqasid al-Sharia, the objectives or the main goals, the ultimate goals of Islamic law. That's intelligence. If someone does that in an identical, totally identical situation, some young Muslims would tell him, "You changed the deen of Allah." Why? Because they don't understand. They don't have this intelligence. They don't have this intelligence. Now, I mentioned I referred to some of the guys in the UK who go around, walk around, saying that, okay, we want to establish Sharia here in this country. This is what they say. They say as well that we will raise the flag of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah on Buckingham Palace. We would kill the Queen. We would do this. We would do. It's so provocative, that anyone who hears that, any British patriot, British human being, would automatically develop hatred to what these people stand for. Sometimes you feel it's deliberate, the way it's been done. And the problem is that they say to these people, they say to the British public, they say, we want to establish Sharia. And they say, we will cut the hands of the thieves. And we will chop off the heads of so and so and things like that. We will do this, we will do that. Now, is that the way of the Prophet ﷺ? Definitely no. When we talked about Umar ibn Khattab, as he put the Islamic punishment only during that year on hold, we said, why did he put it on hold? Because you don't go around in Islam cutting people's hands just like that. Even if there's a Muslim government, if you do not give people the basic rights Accommodation, that's their right. It's not something they have to struggle for. The basic accommodation is their right. Their food is their right. Clothing is their right. All the basic needs are answered. The dignity is preserved. Only then you can say, I can apply Islamic law here. Islamic punishment. If you don't give them their rights, you have no right to execute these punishments on them. So this is why we say, when people ask you, do you have these punishments in Islam? You have to correct the question. You know, there is a human tendency. And this is why, there's another reason why we think differently. Why we think differently. We cannot think about any notion, or about any person, we cannot judge any person unless we develop a complete notion or thought about him. Okay? Now let me keep it to Islam. Just talk about Islam. Any way of life, if you were to judge it, you cannot judge that by only one aspect. And if you don't get enough information, do you know what you do? Subconsciously, automatically, do you know what you do? If you only have one side of it, you create the rest of the sides. Where do you bring them from? Your personal experience. Now when people in the West hear about Islam, about these certain aspects about Islam, okay, they take these aspects of Islam, they cut them, they paste them on Western way of life. They don't fit. If you use these very aspects in isolation and paste them on the Western way of life, which is an alien context for these aspects of Islam, it becomes injustice. Just as when you do not give people their basic rights and then you start chopping off their hands because they steal, okay, you are not practicing Islam. That's a distortion of Islam. That's not Islam. So you do not judge a way of life, you do not judge a country, by the way, you do not judge a person without forming a complete image, a complete picture. Now if you don't get enough information, if you don't get all the facts, you get only one aspect of the facts, automatically and subconsciously you tend to complete the picture from your own storage of information. And this is why we misjudge most people. You meet one person for the first time, you see an attitude or a behavior you don't approve of, you pass a judgment on that person. Most of the time, it's inaccurate. You need to give that person time to collect enough information, gather enough information, so you complete a picture that is based on fact, rather than, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called a dhann, conjecture. You shouldn't follow that. See? So when we speak to these people, we tell them in Islam, you know, we have these punishment. When they ask you about Islam, do you have these in Islam? Why do women cover in Islam and men don't cover in Islam? Do you know why these thoughts come to their minds? Because they cut this aspect of Islam and they paste it on the Western culture. It doesn't fit. It seems as injustice. This is why they ask these questions. So don't be trapped with these questions. If you are asked this question, try to provide them with a better idea. Try to explain to them that you cannot judge Islam by comparing it or by taking one aspect of Islam and placing it within the Western context. It doesn't work like that. It's just like if you need to go through a process of medication, you pick and choose one stage of that medication, you could destroy your health. You could destroy your health. Actually, with some medical processes, long, protracted medical treatment, some stages could be very destructive to your body, but they are necessary to help you recover. Just like with chemotherapy. Chemotherapy, if you take, if you don't complete the full course, it could have very negative effects on you. Because it could destroy some of the cells in your body, and the tumor or the cancer cells are not destroyed yet, and it weakens your immune system. So these surviving cancer cells, they become more active, and actually they could end your life sooner than if you hadn't had the treatment. The same applies to Islam. Don't take one aspect, paste it on a Western context, and try to judge Islam by means of that. Okay? So this is why I said that it's not suitable that we talk to these people about these aspects. It's not that we're trying to trick anybody, or we're trying to hide some aspects of Islam. But it is what Ali ibn Abi Talib said in a famous statement. He said, حَدِّثُوا النَّاسَ بِمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَتُرِيدُونَ أَنْ يُكَذَّبَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. Tell the people what they can relate to. Tell the people the knowledge that they are capable of digesting, according to the level of their knowledge and understanding. Because if you don't do that, they would disbelieve in Allah and His Messenger. Abdullah bin Mas'ud said, ما أنت بمحدث قوما حديثا لا تبلغه عقولهم إلا كان فتنة لبعضهم. If you tell, or if you give people some knowledge, which is truth, knowledge that is true, you give it to them and it's beyond their comprehension, beyond their level of understanding, it would be a serious trial for them, for some of them. This is why one day Sufyan al-Thawri was teaching some of his students and he said something. Someone was informed. He wasn't a student of knowledge. Once he heard about this answer, he came to Sufyan al-Thawri. He said, did you say such and such? He said, no. Obviously, why did he lie? Obviously, he has weighed up his options. He said, no. He said, but they told me you said that. He said, no. Then the guy left. So the student said, I mean, you told us that thing, and now you're denying it in front of this person. He said, yes. Because I know if I say it to this person, it would lead him to commit a crime. It's knowledge beyond his comprehension. It could lead him to kufr. So when you give people some information about Islam, which they are not ready to receive, you are giving them a fitna. Don't think that you are giving them Islam or you're telling them about Islam. That's part of faith-based intelligence, as we give da'wah. Okay, I'll take another example. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ in Hudaybiyah, the condition was, anyone who comes from Mecca as a Muslim, without the permission of those who are in charge of him, like a son comes without his father's permission, a wife comes without her husband's permission, but that was abrogated later on, with regards to women. A slave comes without the permission of his master, and so on and so forth. When they were signing that truce, or that treaty, the son of the negotiator of Quraysh, Suhail ibn Amr, his son, his name was Abu Jandal. He was Muslim. At that moment, he managed to break loose from his captivity in Mecca, and he came to the Muslim camp. His father was conducting the treaty with the Prophet ﷺ. He saw his son coming, and he said, that's the first one to go back to Mecca. Imagine. Now Abu Jandal, when he heard about this, he started screaming, oh Muslims, you leave me for these kuffar? You abandon me for these people to torture me and push me back to kufr? Imagine, very difficult situation. Now some dua, some people of knowledge, when they advise the youth, when they teach them how to handle the time in which we live, they say, they accuse them of cowardness. Some of them actually accuse the scholars of being government agents. And why do they do that? Because of their short-sightedness. If they were living at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, I wonder what would they accuse the Prophet ﷺ of. At that statement. Someone coming from Mecca, he's a Muslim, they've tortured him. He managed to break loose. And now you're sending him back? And he's screaming, he's asking you for help. And you're sending him back? The Prophet ﷺ said, Allah will help him. Go back. Give him to his father. And guess what his father, do you know what his father did? He started smacking him and punching him in the face and dragging him on the sand in front of the Prophet ﷺ. What did the Prophet ﷺ do? Nothing. Many people would interpret this wrongly. The Prophet ﷺ, that's a sign of weakness. That's not. That's not. If we are short-sighted, we'll call it weakness. But in reality, it will turn out to be one of the most intelligent moves, political moves, the Prophet ﷺ ever did in his life. You see? So many times we are trapped within the same situation, and here our time horizon comes into play as well. Extend your time horizon. Extend your insight. And Umar ibn Khattab was not pleased with that. So guess what he did? Umar ibn Khattab, as Suhail ibn Amr was dragging his son, Umar ibn Khattab walks next to him, and he has his sword on his waist, and he pushes it close to Abu Jandal, and he said, he winks. He tells him, actually he's insinuating, because he doesn't want to break the treaty, that you take the sword and kill your dad, get rid of that. But do you know what the son said? At that very stressful moment, he said, no, I hope Allah will bring my father to Islam. And later on his father became Muslim by him. You see? That's intelligence. Faith faith-based intelligence. That's what we need. So you see, Islam is very practical. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when we go through these incidents and these events in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, most of us take them as entertainment, a story, but we don't dive deep into them to see the kind of practicality, intelligence the Prophet ﷺ had. And then, only then, if we understand that, we can take that benefit and use it in our lives. But most of the time, we have this gap. We see it as it is something distant, some kind of, fiction, some kind of fairy tales that don't relate to reality. No, every event in the life of the Prophet ﷺ is full with wisdom and intelligence, and we can use it. But it's just that we develop the mentality in order to become receptive of this knowledge, of this wisdom. Then we take it and we benefit from it. Okay, another example of intelligence, faith-based intelligence, is choosing Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to be Khalifa. The Muslims were in a state of chaos, imbalance, when the Prophet ﷺ died. Al-Ansar gathered in one place to choose a Khalifa for the Muslims from them. But Abu Bakr and Umar, they know that the Khalifa, because the Prophet ﷺ stated so, is from Quraysh. They know that. And they understand the political dilemma. Because if Al-Ansar choose a Khalifa and the Muhajirun choose a Khalifa, the Muslims would inevitably fight among each other. It's known. This is why the Prophet ﷺ said, if there is a Khalifa and someone tries to take it over from him, you have to fight the one who's trying to take it over. There's no two Khalifas, there's one. There is one. His authority is one. Otherwise, Muslim would kill each other. What did Umar al-Khattab do? Generally, it would be that at least the Muslims should, consult with each other and have some kind of dialogue until they arrive at a conclusion. Umar al-Khattab, at that moment, Abu Bakr and Umar al-Khattab, they marched to where the Ansar were gathering. And they were about to choose the Khalifa. It was a matter of seconds, by the way. Once they arrived, Umar al-Khattab wanted to speak, but Abu Bakr spoke. Abu Bakr didn't want the Khilafah. He wanted Umar al-Khattab or Abu Ubaidah. The three of them came. Abu Bakr spoke, and the Ansar were a bit, baffled. Because it seems that they heard some hadith they didn't know before. Umar al-Khattab realized it was the chance. It was the chance. Now Al-Ansar are receptive. They're skeptical about having a Khalifa from themselves after they heard the hadith. And Abu Bakr is there. He's the best of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. And I believe Umar al-Khattab knew that it was Abu Bakr that was going to be the Khalifa, because there are clear indications from the statements of the Prophet. It was a matter of a few seconds. Umar al-Khattab extended his hand to Abu Bakr. He could read the situation very well. It wasn't the ideal way to choose the Khalifa. But what were his choices? He held the hand of Abu Khalifa and he said, I give you the bay'ah, you are the Khalifa. Spontaneously, everyone else gave Abu Bakr the bay'ah. And it was over. And he saved the Muslims from a big fight that would have caused bloodshed. That's intelligence. It's not the ideal way to choose the Khalifa. It's not the ideal way. But you see how it goes? What builds that type of intelligence? You might say some people are smart. Yes, some people are smart. But do you know Islam can build that in you? This is something I explained 2 days ago in the first session. Our mental process, our logical thinking is selective. It is selective. And if you develop an interest in one field, or in one discipline, your brain becomes ultimately genius in that field. And you would actually outwit people who are more intelligent than you. That's a reality. This is how we function. Our attention is selective. Our thought process is selective. Our behavior is selective. We choose it. But if we don't understand these inner dynamics, we think that we just behave by accident or for some mysterious reason. No. Each action you do, you can trace it back to its origin. And you can deal with this origin, and you can actually choose your actions, choose your behavior, choose your attitude, even choose your thoughts. In Arabic they say, وعين الرضا عن كل عيب كليلة ولكن عين المقت تبدي المساوئ. When you love a person, you don't see their faults. You don't see their faults. نعم حب love is blind. But when you hate a person, you only see their mistakes and their faults. So our mental process is selective, our senses are selective. So, and our mental process depends a lot on the information we receive from the world around us. So if you develop an interest in an area, you will develop a more complicated, more sophisticated mental process when it comes to that area. And you will develop the ability to process information more efficiently than anybody else, even if they are more intelligent than you. And then you become actually smarter in that field. Imagine, and this requires some knowledge about the identity which I spoke about yesterday. I advise those who were not there on Monday or Tuesday to check the Ustream accounts for Abu Hurairah, Masjid Abu Hurairah. You will find the lecture there. I believe it's very practical. Once you build your identity around belief of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, around faith, love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, anything that could help the ummah, you start to detect it when people don't even see it. You will recognize it when people don't even know that it exists. Some people seem to be like these bounty hunters. They seem to have this strange detecting ability, like they have a radar, they can spot any opportunity looming at the horizon when people are totally oblivious about it. Why is this? The basis for that is interest. If they develop an interest in a certain area, you can detect things people don't see in that area. Okay? With faith, it's the same. With faith, it's the same. Okay, dealing with the apostate Arabs. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, many of the Arabs apostated. Some of them refused to pay zakah. And the army of Usama was marching to the north to fight the Romans or the Byzantines. Now, everyone, practically speaking, doing the maths of that, it would be crazy to send that army to go and fight the Byzantines when very few will remain in Medina and fight the apostates who were determined to come and attack Medina and destroy the Khilafah. So all the companions actually came to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and they told him, how do you send that army now? Keep it. We need it because we have to defend Islam. These people will jump on us. All of them are ready. They're preparing themselves. Abu Bakr said no. He said, I'm not going to withhold an army that the Prophet ﷺ sent. Because the Prophet ﷺ commanded that the army of Usama leaves. But because of his death, they were waiting. Abu Bakr went with that command. He wanted to hold on to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Many people might say this is some sort of an adamant attitude, but no. Abu Bakr was the most knowledgeable of the companions, and I have no doubt that he could see what was happening at some stage. So he sent the Usama, or Jaysh of Usama, or the army of Usama, to the north to face the Byzantines. And guess what? The apostates, they said, a huge army like this, about 10,000 people, marching out of Medina to face the strongest power on earth at the time, the Byzantines. And they know that we are preparing to attack them. These people must have a bigger army still in Medina. So out of fear, they decided to submit to the Muslims and surrender and comply under the leadership of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. So most of the wars of apostasy were abated before they began, were aborted before they began, with the intelligence of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. That's another faith-based intelligence example. A science like Usul al-Fiqh. The Prophet ﷺ taught the companions Islam. How did they learn Islam? Straight away they heard from the Prophet ﷺ the hadith, and they saw Islam implemented, lived. Every word was practiced, was a way of life rather than something they keep to the masjid. So they understood Islam, and they understood how to take the rulings from the Quran and the Sunnah. And that was, this is how Islam was. Very simple. Knowledge in Islam was very simple. Later on, the Arabic language, as people from different nations start to enter into Islam, the Arabic language was watered down. People's competency in English language, in the Arabic language, deteriorated. People's original understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah, as the companions were martyred in different battles, and they were spread all around the growing borders of the Muslim state. People did not have the competence the companions had in distilling rulings from the Quran and the Sunnah. They couldn't. So this is why later Muslim scholars started to see how the companions used to take the rulings from the Quran and the Sunnah, and they came up with a wonderful science that is, I believe it has no parallel in the purely mental sciences humans have ever arrived at. Anyone who learns usul al-fiqh properly, anyone who learns usul al-fiqh properly, I tell you, their intelligence will increase immensely. I'm not joking. I've seen people transform their intelligence level drastically. It's a powerful tool of organizing your thoughts, how to process information in a meticulously organized way. So actually, you develop an insight that leaves an impact in every aspect of your life. Before I studied usul al-fiqh, I could not deal with puzzles, verbal puzzles, different puzzles. I noticed that from myself. After I studied usul al-fiqh, the first 2 levels, any puzzle I came across, I could solve it without any effort. And people would just be amazed. How do you do that? It's very simple. Usul al-fiqh organizes your thoughts in a powerful way. It is so beautiful. It is better than the sciences, or the philosophy of the Western philosophers. Far greater than that. Far more beautiful. It's better than the semantics. That is a linguistic discipline. And actually, contemporary semantics, even the English language, there are many aspects of it that trace the roots back to usul al-fiqh. That was created by Muslims. How did they come up with something like that? That's intelligence. How was it inspired? It's something that I talked about 2 days ago when I mentioned the issue of identity and how we form our identity. So please go back to that video. Identity affects or impacts every aspect in your life positively. It transforms your mental process, it transforms your emotional life, it transforms your behavior, and even your performance, your physical performance. And the ayah which I started with today in Surah Al-Anfal is a clear testimony to that. Okay, Umar's decision about Umar Ramada, Ibn Taymiyyah's life. Ibn Taymiyyah's life. Ibn Taymiyyah is an amazing person, and I always like to revisit the life of Ibn Taymiyyah. Because he's a very interesting person, and the beauty of the life of Ibn Taymiyyah, that the language of his time, we still have good access to it. We still can understand it. Unlike the life of some of the early, or most of the early Muslim scholars, we need to develop competence in Arabic, strong competence in Arabic, and not only Arabic as a language, but cultural Arabic that was present at that time, to be able to get the personal touch of anything they said. Get the full package of the language, rather than the basic meaning. Ibn Taymiyyah, about his beauty, he mastered the Islamic science fully. When he was at the age of 18, he excelled, and he actually was better than his own teachers at the age of 18. The Mufti, who is the official Mufti, at that time would come and attend the classes of Ibn Taymiyyah. The Mufti was about in his 50s or 60s. Ibn Taymiyyah was 18 years old. He started 17. He would come and attend to benefit. Different Muslim groups would come and argue and debate with Ibn Taymiyyah about the most sophisticated and detailed aspects of their version of Islam. And guess what? These are the most, the experts in these groups, in their own group, in their own belief, in their own aqidah. And guess what? Every time any of them came and debated with Ibn Taymiyyah, he said that I learned from Ibn Taymiyyah about my madhab things I've never come across. How did he master the sciences of Ahl Sunnah? And he mastered the sciences of each of the groups in Islam, which were, plentiful at his time, especially at his time. He knew all the ins and outs of the madhab of each group, each one. So the experts of any madhab would come and debate with him and end up learning from him about their own madhab. And he studied philosophy, Greek philosophy, Roman philosophy. And he refuted that. And there are plenty of PhD theses that have been done in Western universities in philosophy about the supremacy of Ibn Taymiyyah's philosophy over that of Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato, and all those. How did he do that? Yet he was so brave that I mentioned his stories as well. He was so brave that he faced the leader of the Mughals when they wanted to invade Damascus. Everyone was scared of that person. No one would say a word. But Ibn Taymiyyah went to that person face to face and reprimanded him. And he said, you are the one who claims to be Muslim. You confiscated the money of the Muslims, the wealth of the Muslims. And you claim to be Muslim? And he spoke to him harshly. And all the while, Qazan, this tyrannical leader, who was an absolute criminal, who had no hesitation in killing people for any reason, when he saw Ibn Taymiyyah speak to him like that, he was full with admiration and respect to Ibn Taymiyyah, to the extent that he asked him, please come and sit next to me. That's intelligence. That's the intelligence we're trying to get as Muslims today. Where do you think Ibn Taymiyyah got that? Does he have some talents Allah has given him? Definitely. But imagine Ibn Taymiyyah never knew Islam. Would he be the same person? I doubt it. Most of that excellence that he had came from Islam. But because he understood Islam very well. Okay. Negative examples, and I want to give these. They are probably common. You might disagree with some of the wording that I use. The off-putting, arrogant, practicing young man. Sometimes some of our youth start practicing. And once they do that, they start looking down upon others. They say, I am practicing, I'm doing my prayers in the masjid, and these guys are not praying in the masjid. These guys, they don't even know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they might not say it, but inside he says, I'm better than these people. Now there are these people who feel that way. If not fully, to a certain extent, that's the case with some people. That shouldn't be the case. When you see others who don't worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you do, first of all, thank Allah that He guided you. And be sure that it's not your own merit that caused you to be guided. Second thing, feel some empathy towards these people. That they have right upon you that you show them the way. They need some guidance. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought guidance to you, these people also need guidance. So try to be the means through which Allah brings them guidance. Feel empathy to them. And this is something as well that I mentioned about Ibn Taymiyyah, that when he was put in prison, obviously without any reason, or without any valid reason, when he sat in the prison, all the criminals of that city, which is Cairo, all the criminals became students of knowledge and righteous people. And the problem that they had, the authorities they had, is that there was no space left in the prison, because prisoners, when the time was for them to come out, they would refuse to go out. They just want to be with Ibn Taymiyyah. How did he reach that? He felt empathy towards people. Did he sit in the prison and keep to himself, these guys are filthy, these guys are criminals, I'm better than these guys, I don't need to mix with them? No, he mixed with them, he taught them, he educated them, he transformed their lives. That's another form of intelligence. So, another example is the unsociable practicing young man. And this is actually a sign of weakness. Sometimes, if you know some weakness about yourself, that you can't handle the pressure from the group of friends around you, or your classmates, or your family, you need to withdraw a bit. I understand this. You need to keep to yourself for some time until this iman, this little baby, grows in your heart and stands on its feet. You need to keep the company of the practicing people until you reach a level of strength where you can handle more pressure. I understand this. But there is a stereotype, a typical image about the practicing person that, he shouldn't be around because he would spoil everything. Is that common in the West? A practicing person, or like if some group of guys are planning some activity to like go out, go on a picnic or something, and one of these practicing brothers come, they say, oh dear, it's gone now. The whole plan is destroyed. Okay? As I said, sometimes you need to go through this stage. I understand. But it shouldn't be the story of the rest of your life. It shouldn't be that. And why should the practicing young Muslim, why should they be the wet blanket all the time? Why? Do you know why? Because we react rather than taking the initiative. If practicing Muslims take the initiative to build their own activities and to invite other people, this whole equation would be non-existent. That's a form of intelligence. And Islam pushes us towards that. It calls us to that. That we take the initiative instead of just being reactive, okay, see what's around me, and have to hang around with these guys that you don't like, that you don't fit in with, and they look down upon you, they make fun of you, and they don't actually enjoy your company. Why should you be like that? Islam doesn't teach us to be so passive and so complacent. Why don't have a sense of initiative? Build some kind of activity. Build some kind of network among practicing brothers and organize some activities that these guys are unable to do. And invite them to these activities. And let them take part. And you take the initiative, you have the upper hand, you have the authority, and you teach them and inspire them to become practicing people. Why do we have to see it the other way around? You see, that's a problem with our understanding of Islam. And when we are asked, we say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran and the Prophet tells us in the Sunnah that once we become Muslims, once we practice, we have to go through trials. That's true. But it doesn't mean that you throw yourselves in trouble. It doesn't mean that you have to be passive. It doesn't mean that you have if you have an opportunity, you just say, no. I have to go through a suffering. I don't have to succeed in that way. That's not from Islam. That's wrong mentality. And we ascribe it to Islam. That's the problem. A few months, there were brothers who had an initiative in my country, Jordan, to build some kind of an organization to help in da'wah and charity and do some good work. And every time they approached someone for funding or for support, do you know what they told them? They told them the Prophet ﷺ for 13 years he suffered and he never made any organization. You have to go through the suffering. So basically the message was, don't do any organization, don't do any work, just do the passive thing you usually do, and somehow in a magical way things will change. And they think that's Islam. Honestly, people think that this is Islam. They believe that this is how things have to go, this is how things have to be. When you tell them, but non-Muslims, unfortunately sometimes enemies of Islam, they put so much resources, so much funding, so much effort, so much organization, so much thought, planning, strategy in order to cause damage to Muslims and to Islam. They say, yeah, the dunya is for them, but we have the akhirah. And that's the wrong statement to use on this, especially at this time. With any statement to be true, or for any statement, or any statement you make, try to have two conditions in it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ صِدْقًا وَعَدْلًا. And the word of your Lord has been perfected in truth and appropriateness. So you have to say, أن تقول عدلا, أن تقول صدقا وتعمل عدلا. You have to speak the truth and act appropriately. Like I ask you, how do you feel today? And you say, it's 5 o'clock. You told the truth. but you didn't do adl. You didn't act appropriately. You didn't give the right answer. The same thing applies. When these people say, for them is the dunya and we have the akhirah, so we have to be poor, we have to be weak, we have to be subjugated, we have to be disorganized, and we have to lack every form of success. Why? Because the akhirah is ours. The akhirah, inshallah, is ours if we are truly Muslims, if we hold on to Islam, if we strive. But it doesn't mean that this statement applies in this sense. No. So this is lack of this kind of intelligence that we have to deal with. Okay, another example is the impulsive Muslim who is negligent of Allah in his personal obligations. Okay, I mentioned this as well 2 days ago, but I'll approach it from a different perspective. Many Muslims around in the Muslim world, they have so much love for Islam and for the Muslim Ummah. They spend their time watching news. The blood burns and boils as they watch the state of the Muslims everywhere. And what do they say? These guys control the media. And then they say, these Muslim governments, these are such this and that. These Muslims, they will never make anything. These Muslims will always be failure. And they do that day in, day out for hours. They have good intention, love for Islam. But why live in that impulse all the time? Why live in that impulse? What are you doing? What have you contributed to Islam and Muslims? And by the way, this is a total psychological game which is called the game of blame. Blame is a very disastrous kind of attitude. If you develop it, you can never develop yourself. Because you can always find excuses and cast the blame on somebody else. So you always feel as you've done perfect job, while you have actually done nothing. So this kind of Muslim lacks the intelligence, lacks the proper intelligence. They think, okay, yeah, it's good that to keep blaming other people, blaming other Muslims. Yes, even if they are blameworthy. So what? And as I said in English, instead of cursing the dark, why don't you light a candle? The pessimistic Muslim complaining about everything, that's for obviously, like in my country, especially like with driving, with wherever you go, like you have some paperwork to do, whatever you want to do, obviously you find obstacles, and you find people always complaining, you stupid Arabs, you backward Arabs, you will always be like that. I mean, what's the point? What's the point? You complain about everything. Even when things are good for them, they still find something to complain about. It's become their way of life. Okay, Muslims fighting against each other. Just let me talk about the Prophet ﷺ. Imagine the Messenger ﷺ at the time of Mecca when his companions were persecuted. What did the Prophet ﷺ tell them when they came and complained? Do you want to change the... Okay. Okay, let me take, as the brother inshallah changes the CD, let me take any feedback, anything you'd like to contribute. So it's not a passive kind of listening to the lecture. Let's try to make it active. That takes knowledge. The brother asks, when can you draw the line, when to compromise and when not to compromise? That needs knowledge of Islam. This is why I said, only scholars can decide on these matters. And when they consult with each other as well. One person, even if they are well versed in knowledge, they could go wrong. So this is what it has to be: a person who is well versed in knowledge, Islamic knowledge, has good experience, life experience, and they have as well, collectively, they arrive at a collective decision. That would be the best way. But a person that you could easily go wrong, even if you have some knowledge. Okay. Any other contribution? Salam. Salam. The answer is on a different level. The brother is asking, the Prophet ﷺ took all the precautions when he made hijrah, and he planned it very well. But Umar ibn Khattab obviously did not. Jazakallah. The narration that Umar ibn Khattab stood in the middle of Mecca and he said, anyone who wants his mother to lose him, then follow me. Okay, that's not right. Actually, Umar ibn Khattab, he made hijrah with 2 other people. One of them could not make it. I can't remember his name. The second one is Yahya ibn Ayyash. He went with him and until they reached Medina. Then Yahya ibn Ayyash, 2 of his brothers came and convinced him to come back to Mecca for some reason about his mother. So Umar ibn Khattab actually, in secret, he agreed with these people at Fajr time. And they agreed that if any of us doesn't show up, then the other 2, they have to carry on hijrah, because they don't want to jeopardize the 3 of them, or put at risk the 3 of them. So if one of them cannot make it, at least 2 people make it, or at least one of them makes it. So the authentic narration, it's a Hasan. This narration is Hasan. The one that Umar al-Khattab declared his hijrah openly is weak. Okay, so actually Umar al-Khattab took the precautions. Yes. Why? Yeah. Okay. Jazakallah, a very good question. He says, the brother just says, if we are in MSA at university or whatever, and a group of people are doing something haram, a group of Muslims are doing something haram, and you are the only one who disagrees with that. So to what extent, can we be sociable or unsociable when it comes to that? It goes back to what I said about being taking the initiative, being proactive. In that situation which you mentioned, people are doing something wrong, they took the initiative and you reacted. So obviously you can't dominate the scene all the time. So this is definitely going to happen. So what you do with it, when I said unsociable, that shouldn't be your general conduct. Definitely you will be unsociable, you have to be, and you have to actually stand out, and you have to withdraw from that when it's necessary. There's no harm with this. But if that's the story of your life, this is when it becomes a problem. If it happens every now and then when it's necessary, that's fine. Don't associate with them when they do something haram. Don't say, oh, I'll give them advice. You go and listen to music with them. Or they do something wrong, and you join them and they say, I'll try to give them advice. Like this person they went to a village, they were giving da'wah, supposedly. In this village there was a grave, people were going around the grave. And all of a sudden this group started going around the grave as well. So someone asks them, he says, why are you going around the grave? That's shirk. He says, no, we want to go around the grave with them so that we can tell them that's haram. Okay? That's obviously against Islam. You can't commit shirk in order to tell people that's shirk. So you preserve yourself first. But try to build some kind of strategy. Initiative has to do with strategy. You have to be prepared. It's not a spontaneous thing. You have to build a strategy. If your whole conduct, or generally, your general conduct, is to take the initiative and be proactive, and you organize events, and make them more interesting than their own events, and make them more productive than their own events, okay? When such events happen, and you withdraw, some of them will withdraw with you. You would have developed the credibility with them that they would start to trust your judgment and feel shy to go against what you do. So that's the beauty of being proactive. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, let me carry on. Okay, Muslims fighting against each other. It happens a lot. And unfortunately, among some practicing people. Why? Because many times we don't know when to disagree, or when to accommodate disagreement. Some disagreement is okay. Some disagreement is okay. Now, some of the good-hearted brothers, they're very concerned about the sunnah, and that should be the case with every Muslim. And they have this aversion to bid'ah. But sometimes they think these rules of dealing with the people of Ahlul Bid'ah applies to every situation, no matter. No. Most of the time they apply. But if dealing harshly with a person of bid'ah or people of bid'ah is going to lead to a greater bid'ah, you are not supposed to do that. So this is why sometimes, especially people who don't understand the Arabic language well, they read that when the scholars, the early scholars, when they saw a person of bid'ah, which is true statement and the correct course of action, when they heard a person of bid'ah, like Imam Malik, someone came to him and asked him about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rose above the throne. How did he rise above the throne? He said, Al-istiwa'u ma'loom. The fact that Allah rose above the throne is known, is a fact. Wal-kayfu majhool. The how of it is not known to us. We have no access to this knowledge. وَالْإِيمَانُ بِهِ wajib. Believing in that is an obligation, because it's in the Quran. And asking how is a bid'ah. You are a mubtadi'. Take him out of the masjid. They took him out of the masjid. Now a brother somewhere in any city, okay, I don't want to mention cities, because I don't want some people to get offended. Obviously, no, I don't intend Canada, but I'm talking about another country. Someone in this country, in a certain country, he's sitting in the masjid and he's speaking. Someone asks him a question. It's an innocent question. It hits some kind of a mental association in his mind that has to do with one of the opinions of Ahlul Bid'ah. He looks at this brother and he says, you are mubtadi', take him out of the masjid. Who gave you that right? You see, who gave you that right? You drew parallels between totally different situations. Do you know what the reason why? Imam Malik had authority by the Amir, by the leader of the Muslims. He had some kind of official authority. Who did he say to take that person out of the masjid? There were policemen who worked for the government. They were the ones who took him out, Now, this person misunderstood. He did not understand or read the whole situation. He thinks that's how you deal with the people of bid'ah wherever you are. So he says to that, anyone asks him, and that person, it seems that, because obviously Imam Malik had a sense of intuition, he had firasa. He knew, he could tell what is the intention behind this question. But who told you have this kind of skill? So straight away you acted, or you had a judgmental attitude towards that person, and you told the brothers, get him out of the masjid. The brothers try to get him out of the masjid, they punch each other, a fight breaks out in the masjid, and it becomes total chaos. I'm telling you, Allah is not pleased with such an act. And this person, if you tell him, why did you do something like that? He says, it's the deen of Allah. I have to protect it. That's lack of intelligence. That's not the way of the Prophet ﷺ. Some of the students of knowledge, unfortunately some people who are strong in knowledge, today they have no business but to pick on others, other scholars. This person is a mubtada'. So-and-so, don't speak to him. Because the guy saw him with so-and-so, who was a person of bid'ah. Wallahi, some people, and if you listen to them, try to imagine, could the Prophet ﷺ have spoken in such a manner? Impossible. Impossible. The amount of envy, the amount of hatred, the amount of insensitivity is just beyond description. And it shows that there are personal issues behind this. There's personal politics. And then when you ask them, they say, that's manhaj Ahl Sunnah. We defend Islam against the people of bid'ah. Yes, we defend Islam against the people of bid'ah, definitely. But you have to understand what bid'ah means, who's the real mubtadi', and how to handle that in different situations. Okay, so these are very important issues. And a great deal of splitting and fights against Muslims should have been avoided right from the beginning. But it's people taking positions that are far beyond the level of their knowledge, taking authority far beyond their level of understanding of Islam. And then once you start to critique them, even with respect, they label you as mubtadi'. Because they have come to some sort of strange, fancy conclusion that I am Islam, I am pure Islam, anything attacks me, attacks Islam. That's the real psychological problem behind some of these guys, some of their problems. Okay. Muslim communities who don't contribute to society. A Muslim says, I live, I just save myself. I save myself and I mind my own business. I don't need these guys who come to the masjid, these guys who do work for the masjid. They have their own issues, they have their own politics. If he hears one word from a person, he feels offended, and I'm not going to give anything to this masjid, I'm not going to give anything to this community. People don't actually deserve it, people don't appreciate it, why should I do it in the first place? That's lack of intelligence. That's lack of intelligence. And obviously it goes back to what we explained in detail concerning identity. If you develop the ideal Muslim identity, these things can never ever affect your self-esteem, and your identity is preserved. So you develop this personal strength that no one can throw you out of balance, no matter what they say to you, what they do to you. So we need to develop this type of intelligence, inshallah. So no matter what happens, we contribute to the society and to the community. Muslims feeling ashamed of Islam and ashamed of their fellow Muslims. And that's one of the manifestations of this. Muslims changing or tampering with their names. Muhammad becomes Mo. I don't know, you know the rest of it. I'm not familiar with them. But generally speaking, why do you feel shy about Islam? Why do you feel shy about Muslims? You don't have, people who do this, they don't have understanding of Islam, they don't have a level of insight to realize that we have a treasure that these people need. Why not share it with them? Why not first understand it, then you will be able to share it with them. This type of intelligence, I'm telling you, no matter what type of program or books or literature you go to in self-help, in coaching, in leadership, in self-development, in well-being, that you check, it never even comes close to what Islam has to offer. It never comes close. But the thing is, we are not even tapping into 1% of what Islam gives us. So if we keep running away from Islam, what are you getting? You're sacrificing, you're doing away generously, you're giving out something that's more precious than anything you think you might attain or you might get by dissociating yourself from Islam or Muslims. Okay, Muslims who can work but prefer to live on welfare. That's a serious problem. People depend on sadaqah, or they depend on the government benefit or welfare, and they can work. They can work. Unfortunately, in the UK, Muslims are notorious for that. Honestly. And that's a serious problem. That is a serious problem. Once, especially if some people want to get some labor, some laborers to do some work for them, or even some like plumbers, some carpenters, any kind of profession. Once they go to the market, if they see a Muslim, they don't choose him. They don't choose Muslims. Because they know they would do a patchy job, they would not keep the same quotes they give them, and ultimately there will be just a whole series of problems popping up every now and then. So just headache. So they prefer to pay extra money to other people who they feel will do the job right. And I ask the Muslims of the UK to forgive me, that's not all the Muslims. There are some bright examples, mashallah. There are some brilliant examples. But unfortunately, that's a big problem in the UK. Many Muslims can work, but like if you check the files of they call it benefit there, the government benefit, if you check it, you can recognize most of the names. Muhammad, Ahmad, Saeed, Abid, Zahid, same names. Most of them, these names. And most of these brothers can work. Why do this? And they say, I'm doing that, no one knows about it, I'm minding my own business. I have my reasons, I don't want to work because that affects my deen. And, it's not exactly the ideal situation for a Muslim. And they have, they can come up with different excuses. But they don't realize the gloomy image they're growing collectively for the Muslim community. And now, no wonder now, when the media really pushes ahead the image that Muslims are terrorists, every Muslim is a potential terrorist, and that Muslims are not contributing to society, Muslims are taking your money, and so on and so forth. Now when the hijab ban is offered for people to vote on, people have no problem voting against the hijab. Because these Muslims have been taking our money and not even contributing to society. They can work, but they live on welfare. You see? And we complain about the media. Well, we have paved the way for the media to do that. And actually this could lead us, I'm not sure if I put that here. Yeah, Muslim communities who do not contribute to society. I skipped that point. Huh? Okay. Just let me take the top. Muslim communities who don't contribute to society. Now, most of the time, we say we want to provide some service for the community, which is a valid aspiration. But why do we always forget about the society? We say, we should, care for our Muslim brothers. They have priority, which is right. But why have shorter insight? On the long run, the more you contribute to the society, it will pay off to the Muslim community as a whole. Muslims are seen, and I'm talking from my experience in different countries, I'm not sure about Canada, but Muslim communities are seen to be selfish. Selfish. These Muslims take government funding, they use our taxes money, and they only provide services for Muslims. They say, we want Muslim schools, we want Muslim services, Muslim youth center, Muslim recreation center. We want these, we want that. What have you given to society using our tax money? What have you given to society? And take into consideration the nature of the countries in which you live here. You have to take that into consideration because it could make all the difference. This is the language these people understand. Now, if they in the future, if they work towards, and they know how to build a strategy, they're very intelligent. They know how to build a strategy. If they want to build a strategy to ban the niqab, or tomorrow ban the hijab, then you start to complain about that. But if you actually contributed to society, when they are about to take any move against Muslims, when they were to create any lie against Muslims, people who have a sense of justice and fairness in the society, they would say, no, we know Muslims and they're not like that. We know that Muslims are not like that. We've seen them. People, if they see on the streets a reality, they would not believe its opposite if it's presented in the media. So these are things we have to think about. Many times we're just short-sighted to say, we have to contribute only to our community. Only the Muslims deserve. These people don't deserve. Who told you that? Who told you that? You take from this community, give back into this community. And it will pay off for Muslims. And for everybody. Okay, drug dealing and addiction. Obviously, I don't think we need to talk about this. People who lose, especially, it's a great sign, a very clear sign about people losing their identity. Why would a person go that way, destroy their life, the life of their family, and destroy every positive value or notion in their lives? Go into drugs and all that stuff. And unfortunately, some Muslims are drug dealers. It's a passive thing to be a drug addict, because you can easily fall into addiction. But it takes a lot of initiative to become a drug dealer. Isn't that true? You become a drug dealer, you go through dangers, you go through death experiences. You are a target. 24/7 you have to be on guard. You have to be careful. At any stage you could be shot and dead. You could be taken to prison. You could be caught. So it takes a lot of initiative, a lot of courage to become a drug dealer. We don't develop the initiative to become good Muslims, but it's easy to develop it to become drug dealers. Okay, Muslims feeling ashamed. Okay, fine. We've dealt with this. The architecture of faith-based intelligence. Okay, identity is the central pivot when it comes to Muslim character. And I can't repeat what I said the day before yesterday. I spoke like about 2.5 hours, and it's a bit, I won't say complicated, but it's a complex thought process. So this is why I can't explain it now. This is why I can't explain it in detail now. It's not like complicated that it's difficult, but it's a complex. You need to take a first impression of it, then you build on it another idea, another understanding, and you build on until everything falls in place. Then the architecture of the soul and the dimensions of human existence, which inshallah, I guess today I'll start talking about some of these issues. Okay, we and the universe. That's ultimately our relationship with the world around us. This could be some of the final points we will talk about. Okay, fitra, it's part of the architecture of the soul. Fitra is the inner compass. It gives you direction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the fitra as a seed in our hearts. The hadith of Hudayfa in the Yaman, may Allah be pleased with him, he says, the Messenger ﷺ said, إِنَّ الْأَمَانَةَ نَزَلَتْ فِي جَذْرِ قُلُوبِ الرِّجَالِ ثُمَّ عَلِمُوا مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ ثُمَّ عَلِمُوا مِنَ السُّنَّةِ. The amana, which is the seed of fitrah, which is the talent, this natural ability to receive the religion of Allah and practice it, that we are designed according to, this fitrah, is planted right at the root of the heart of every human being. Fitrah is a very complex, again, kind of concept, but inshallah, as we speak, it should become clearer. Fitrah gives you a sense of direction, and it gives you the talent, the natural tendency to follow Islam. This is why the natural way is to follow Islam. And this is why when you follow Islam, you tap on your full potential. You tap on your full potential. And as I said previously, the whole world as well starts to give you its full potential. And the example I mentioned was the Khilafah of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And during his Khilafah, you know, the grain of wheat, which is as big as that, okay? At his time, it was as big as that. As the stone of a date. That's recorded in the books of history without any doubt. How did this happen? It happens when we reach our full potential by worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by fulfilling what we were created for, by fulfilling or actually practicing the very design that we are created for. We reach our full potential. The whole world, okay, we actually unify, or we get in a state of unity with the momentum that is running through the whole world. Okay, I'll give you like 5 minutes to freshen up a bit. Okay, then we'll come after, inshallah, 6 minutes. So 5 to 9, inshallah, we'll start again, and we'll try to finish some of these concepts. Okay, Jazakumullah khair for your patience. So 5 minutes. Okay, if you just walk around here in the musalla, let the body flow, the blood flow through your body, inshallah.